In just one night, the Berlin Wall crumbled. In a single day, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. But when 7 African nations united in under 24 hours, it became one of the fastest and most dramatic geopolitical shifts in modern history, and the world was completely unprepared. On December 15th at 11:47 p.m., while most of the world was asleep, Ghana's President Wame Asante looked at an encrypted message on his phone. The words were simple, yet revolutionary. Operation Baobab Tree begins now. Are you ready to change history? In Mali, President Assimi Goïta was already awake, reading over classified documents that would soon send shockwaves through global institutions. In Niger, President Mohamed Bazoum was holding a confidential emergency meeting with his top advisors. All across West Africa, 7 countries were on the verge of a decision that would redefine the future of the continent. But the seeds of this movement were planted 3 months earlier in a plain meeting room in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. There, young revolutionary leader Ibrahim Traoré sat across from 6 other African presidents. The meeting was so secretive, not even their own intelligence services were fully aware. For 60 years, we've lived by their rules, using their currency, their banks, their systems. And what do we have to show for it? Poverty, despite sitting on the richest land on earth, Traoré said calmly. Silence followed. These weren't ordinary politicians. They were leaders who had watched their nation's resources exploited, their economies weakened, and their people kept in poverty while foreign companies thrived on African wealth. President Goïta leaned in. What are you suggesting? Traoré rose and pointed to a large map of Africa. We stop asking permission. We build our own monetary union, our own development bank, our own trade alliances. We take back control of our future. Senegal's President Macky Sall looked skeptical. The French won't allow it. The Americans will punish us. The Chinese might pull out their investments. Let them try, Traoré responded with a subtle smile. By the time they understand what's happening, it'll be too late. In total secrecy, the 7 nations began their preparations. The plan was named Operation Baobab Tree, after Africa's most enduring tree, a symbol of strength and survival in the harshest conditions. Like the baobab, this union was meant to endure. Each country moved quietly. Central bank leaders were briefed. Military commanders were informed. Trade ministers began drafting new agreements. Most critically, these nations began accumulating massive reserves of gold, stored far away from Western financial institutions. In Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted a formal dinner for African ambassadors, completely unaware of what was unfolding. Our relationship with Africa has never been stronger, he declared. France is committed to African development. If only he had known that his so-called allies were about to deliver the greatest economic shock since Bretton Woods. December 15, 6 a.m. In Burkina Faso, President Traoré appeared on live television and made a bold declaration. Effective immediately, Burkina Faso is withdrawing from the West African Economic and Monetary Union. We will no longer use the CFA franc. Our new gold-backed currency enters circulation today. By 8 a.m., Mali followed suit. President Goïta was even more direct. Mali reclaims its economic sovereignty. Our resources will benefit our people, not foreign institutions. Currency markets in London went into panic. The CFA franc, once used by 14 African nations and backed by the French Treasury, began experiencing extreme volatility. Phone lines lit up between Paris, Washington, and Brussels. By noon, Niger joined. In a nationally televised speech, President Bazoum announced, "Today, Niger chooses self-respect over dependence. We stand with our brothers in building a self-sufficient Africa." The EU called an emergency session, and France's foreign minister warned of a regional threat. But it was already too late. At 3 p.m., Guinea withdrew from all French-linked monetary agreements. At 5 p.m., Chad, despite its complex ties with France, shocked observers by joining. At 7 p.m., Senegal, France's oldest African ally, delivered the most symbolic blow. President Sall declared, "For 6 decades we've stood by France. Today, we choose to stand with Africa." By 9 p.m., Ghana became the 7th nation to join what the world now called the Great African Awakening. President Akufo-Addo said, "In 1957, Ghana led Africa to political independence. Today, we lead it to economic freedom." In Washington, the National Security Council met urgently. CIA Director William Burns delivered a grim report. "Mr. President, we're witnessing the potential collapse of Western economic influence in West Africa. These 7 nations, controlling 60% of the region's GDP, have just declared financial independence." President Biden asked for options. "Very limited, sir. They've been planning this for months. They have gold reserves, alternative payment systems, and mutual defense plans. Military intervention would be expensive and likely fail." Meanwhile, in Beijing, President Xi Jinping saw an opportunity. If the West loses Africa, China gains a continent. By 11:59 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the operation began, the transformation was complete. The 7 nations had cut ties with Western monetary systems, created their own currency union, and signed joint defense agreements. That night, President Traoré addressed Africa. "Today, we proved that Africa doesn't need outside permission to thrive. We don't need validation to manage our resources. This continent will define its own destiny." The backlash came swiftly. Western media called it economic suicide. The IMF halted all programs in the 7 countries. The World Bank froze development funds. France recalled its ambassadors. But something unexpected followed. The rest of Africa started to listen. Nigeria called for an emergency ECOWAS meeting. Kenya began discussing regional currency independence. South Africa explored ways to exit Western financial systems. The African Union held a special summit. The topic, full continental economic integration. Within a month, the new 7-nation bloc had signed trade agreements with China, Russia, India, and Brazil. Their new gold-backed currency, called the African dinar, started gaining international acceptance. In just 3 months, their combined GDP soared, marking the fastest economic growth in African history. The Berlin Wall fell because people demanded liberty. The Soviet Union collapsed because its system failed. But this African transformation happened because leaders made a conscious choice: dignity over dependency, sovereignty over subjugation. And it all unfolded in just 24 hours. Today, Operation Baobab Tree is taught in universities around the world as the most successful rapid economic transformation in modern history. It proved that African unity is more than a dream. It's a force strong enough to reshape the global order. The tree planted in 24 hours, it's still growing.